Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah al-Kareem. Alhamdulillah, and welcome back for another episode of Life's Adornments. In this episode, inshallah ta'ala, we will be discussing custody rights. As we know, children are a great amana from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're a great trust, and this trust needs to be preserved. And the best way by doing so is to act upon this endeavor by way of understanding the Quran and the Sunnah. So we know that it happens in life. It's something normal. People come together, they get married, and for whatever reasons, people separate. In the event of separation, what are the ways we should go about achieving a way of justice, achieving a way of peace in this matter by way of following the Quran and Sunnah? Who gets custody of the children? How do we go about negotiating these terms, inshallah ta'ala? We would like to introduce our guest, who is Sheikh Assim Al Hakeem. He is a teacher in Zad Academy and a teacher in KIU, and has been an imam and a teacher for over 30 years, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So let's get right into this hot topic, inshallah, Sheikh, about the custody rights. What do we mean by custody when we talk about Islam?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man ihtada bihudah. Amma ba'd. As stated before, Islam governs our lives. It's not rituals that we bow and prostrate and that is it. It's a way of life. So it's a system. It is not only related to us worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal in certain or with certain rituals, and it's not only limited to the masjid, to the mosque, or to the month of Ramadan. It governs every aspect of our lives: financial, political, economical, social, spiritual, physical. And part of governing our lives is that it takes care of a very important segment or a very important level of the community. So this segment of the community is children. Usually in a family that is or was infested with lots of hatred, enmity, dispute, the victims are usually the children. So Islam stands in the side of the weak and vulnerable, and Islam protects them from anything that is ever changing. I get a lot of questions and complaints from women who are now a single mom, while the father who divorced her or separated from her does not pay a penny for his children, thinking that because she's divorced or separated, it's not his obligation anymore. And this is a grave sin. No matter what happens, he's obliged to support and provide. So when we talk about custody, this usually is referring to when the couple separate. Before the custody, before their separation, there's guardianship. So the guardianship means that the father of the children is the one authorized to approve, for example, his girls, his daughters, whether to marry or not to marry. He has the veto. So no marriage can take place without the guardian's approval. The Prophet said, alayhi salam, "La nikaha illa biwali wa shahiday adl." There is no marriage, quote unquote, valid without the consent of the guardian. And he said, any woman who gets married without the consent of her guardian, her marriage is void, her marriage is void, her marriage is void. So this is one part or one aspect of his guardianship. The second aspect, which is providing. So it is his obligation in Islam to provide for his children from birth until they're self-sufficient. So even if the child is 22 years of age, goes to uni, but he doesn't have any income, a father has no right in saying, well, you're old enough, you have to go and work. No, he's still obliged to provide for his son to finish and to start his life standing, hit the ground running, rather than leave him midway. But what happens if the father is stone broke and he doesn't have any money? In this case, Islam says, well, you're exempted. And then it becomes the responsibility of the child himself. If the child possesses money, whether through gifts or inheritance or any other source, the obligation upon the father ceases and stops. So if a child works and earns, I don't have to pay for him. If the child is rich through inheritance, I don't have to pay and provide for him. If the child himself does not have money, the father does not have money, it becomes the obligation of the mother. Now it's mandatory upon the mom, if she's wealthy, to provide for her child. But she has the option whether to provide for the child while holding the husband accountable, so that when he is rich again after 5 or 10 years, she can ask for the money back. Or out of her own goodwill, she waivers that right and she spends on her children for the sake of Allah, then this is a gift from her side.
Okay, now in terms of custody rights, in the event that there's a split that happens, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve our marriages and our families. What happens in this case? Who gets the child? How do we go about navigating that?
So this is an issue of dispute in schools of thought. And the reason is that there are a number of different hadiths, and each hadith is designated and designed for that specific incident.
Okay.
So this is an issue of confusion to some Muslims. So when one of the companions comes to the Prophet ﷺ and says, what is the best deeds at the sight of Allah? And the Prophet says, to pray on time. In another narration, O Prophet Allah, advise me. He does not say pray on time. He said, do not become angry. A third one says, advise me. He said, weep over your sins and remain in your home and do this and do that. So why are these answers different? Scholars say because the Prophet is giving an answer to each individual. So yes, praying on time because you most likely delay prayer on, and for you not to get angry because you have rage issues, and for you to be dutiful to your parents because they're complaining of you, and so on. Likewise, when it comes to custody, the separation took place. There is a hadith that is well known where the Prophet ﷺ said to a woman who was divorced, had a child, and her ex wanted to take the child away from her. The Prophet said, ﷺ, "Anti ahaqqu bihi ma lam tunkahi." You are more worthy and deserving of the custody of the child as long as you remain unmarried. Which means that if she were to get married, in this case, the custody must be taken away from her, because now she is with a strange man, and her ex, the father of the child, would not allow his son or his daughter to be brought up in the house of another man that he does not know of. So it's his right. And the custody is moved whether to her mother, which is the maternal grandmom,
okay,
or to the paternal grandmom. It's an issue of dispute again.
Okay, and oftentimes in divorces they end because oftentimes a person isn't suitable, whether it's the father or the mother, and because of the issue there, it leads to divorce. So what constitutes a person as qualified to have custody? Are there certain conditions that need to be met for a person to be able to then parent their child within these rights?
See, again, this is an issue of debate. The main principle is the mother by default is the one who's entitled to have the rights of custody of her children. However, scholars say that if the mother is a non-Muslim, she does not have the right to have custody, because the most important thing in Islam is the Islamic upbringing. And if I entrust a mother with my child and she is a Jew or a Christian, I cannot trust her upbringing my children to be like her. So this is one of the disadvantages of marrying from a different religion, because the essence and the most important thing in marriage is to have a good Islamic family, a Muslim family, and to bring up your children as Muslims. This here defies the purpose of bringing up Muslim children when they are taken care of by their non-Muslim mother. So scholars say that she's deprived from custody. She is still their mother. She can see them, she can mix with them, but she must not have custody. Likewise, if the mother was an irresponsible woman, so if she puts her children in the car in the middle of the summer and goes shopping, she's not taking care of them. She's probably going to harm them or kill them. If she is an alcoholic, if she is having extramarital relationships, like many single women who do not have a good relationship with Islam, so she flirts, she goes out, she dates, I can't allow children to grow up in such an environment. So this is not your word against mine. This is something that the Muslim judge is obliged to look into, and he's obliged to give a verdict that is within the benefit or for the benefit of the child. And this is his priority and prerogative, not to care about what you say or what she says. What is the most beneficial for the child, this is what the judge chooses and selects. And this is why so many times we have disputes. So the child is 10 years of age. Who should take the custody, the mother or the father? Some schools of thought say if the boy is 7 years of age, then the father should take him. Some say 10 years of age. Some say, no, we should ask the boy to choose. Because there are hadiths where the Prophet ﷺ asked the boy to choose which one you want to go to, your mom or your father. And whatever he chooses, then this is in his benefit if they are both good, righteous, practicing parents. But if one of them is not a Muslim, then by default he goes to the Muslim, and the judge looks into what is most beneficial. Custody does not mean to travel out of the country. So if a couple are married in a city and then they get divorced and the mother wants to go to relocate, he has the option to veto that and say, no, this is where the child was born and raised and this is where we live. She has no right to take the children to another country and leave me stranded, can't see them on holidays, on weekends and nothing. I don't know what's happening to them. This is his right to do that, and Allah knows best.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. We're going to pause for a short break, and we will continue with the topic of child custody and guardianship, inshallah ta'ala. Viewers, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Until you come back, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to our second segment of Life's Adornments, where we were last discussing the rights of children. We're discussing guardianship. And we have Sheikh Assim, who last indicated that the purpose of raising a child is to have a child raised in a righteous way. So this begs the question then, who is permitted then to raise the child? He mentioned the example of when an individual, which is a Muslim man in the Sharia, married to a person either from amongst the Christians or the Jews, and they separate. He said that it isn't permissible for them to be left with their mother because the intention is for them to be raised in a Muslim household. This begs the question then, what constitutes as Ahl al-Kitab, as the people of the book, is what we have in the West, a constitution of Ahl al-Kitab, and is it then recommendable for a Muslim man to marry outside of his faith?
Well, again, this is problematic. Lots of the Muslims, or there is a considerable amount of Muslims who tend to give takfir to one another.
Yes.
And these are known as al-Khawarij. And these people are obsessed of whatever you do, does it take you out of the fold of Islam or not? So they neglect everything, and they just want to classify you, to label you. This, unfortunately, now is being cascaded to even non-Muslims. So they come to the Christians, and they said, okay, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were Christians and Jews. And they're described in the Quran to be the people of the book, meaning the Torah and the Injil. So, are these Christians and Jews nowadays identical to the Christians and Jews at the time of the Prophet ﷺ? Insinuating, hinting to, that today's Christians are not Christians. They don't go to church, they don't practice Christianity, they only are Christians by name. So what they're doing is actually giving them takfir of their own religion. So not only Muslims between themselves, no, they go even an extra mile and taking them out of the fold of Islam. What does that imply? We can't take or eat their slaughtering. We cannot marry their women. And this is problematic because nowhere in Sharia it tells us to give a placement test to any Christian that you are interested in marrying, just to ensure that she is a practicing Christian or at least knows her religion. So we're not talking about agnostics or atheists or people with no religion. We're talking about someone, if you ask them, what's your religion? They say Christianity, but I'm not practicing. Well, if you look at the Muslim world, you'll find that maybe 70% of them are not practicing Muslims. So would we give them takfir as well? Or would we take it for its face value and say they are Muslims until proven otherwise? Those living in the West, Christians until proven otherwise. So if I go to a person from Sweden or Finland, and they have the flag with the cross. So if I ask him, are you a Christian? He says, no, I'm an atheist. This is not from among the people of the book. Because he confesses that he's not a Christian. But the vast majority of people would say, yeah, we're Christians, but we never go to church. We never read our prayers or say our grace or whatever. In this case, they are treated as Christians and as the people of the book.
And is this with condition? What are the conditions for a person? Okay, we acknowledge that they are Christians and they are Jews. Are there other further conditions that would then allow a person to marry them as well, or is it just open?
No, they should be chaste.
Yes.
Women should be chaste. So in the sense that if she's a Christian and you're interested in marrying her, we are instructed to say whether she's chaste or not. So her chastity is very important. If she's known to have different boyfriends, partying, going out, having premarital relationships, this is totally prohibited to marry her. If she is someone who's decent, and there are so many Christians who are decent, they don't all fornicate and play around. There are families that have decent girls and decent women and people who abide by their books and their beliefs and would not have any premarital relationships. So such conditions would be fulfilled in such a woman, and it becomes permissible for a Muslim man to marry. Nevertheless, is it recommended? The answer is no. Because we've seen in so many cases of dispute, in many cases of change of mind, that she files for divorce, and usually she gets that easy because she's married to a Muslim or a non-citizen, and she would take the children with her, and the children would be raised up to be Christians as well. And this is something that is not at all tolerated or accepted in Islam.
Okay, and another thing that happens as well is foster care. Many times both parents are unsuitable for whatever reason. The child will then go into a Christian foster care, and sometimes they're even indoctrinated with the religion, where they have to exchange their food and their water for their religion. We see this happen a lot. Or even if a mother and child goes into a foster home where it takes care of a mother and child, they have to negotiate certain parts of their religion. Well, how do we manage these sort of things?
Well, this is very unfortunate. And the most unfortunate part of it is that you can't do anything. See, this is one of the greatest shortcomings of living in a non-Muslim country. If you go to non-Muslim countries, they do not understand your religion, they do not understand your culture, and they would like all people to melt down in their melting pot so that they leave all their beliefs and traditions out of their country and become like them. And this is totally unaccepted in Islam. One of the strong points of Islam is an identity that every Muslim is proud of. So if you see me in the United States of America, or in Russia, or in South America, or in Asia, you will find me the same person. Maybe I'll change my clothes, but it's the same culture, the same behavior, the same etiquettes, the same moral conduct that never changes. These countries don't want this, and this is why a lot of the locals fight immigration laws. They don't want the Muslims to come because they notice that the Muslims are not willing to compromise their religion for a salary or for some benefits or for a passport. And this is what scares them most. Now, it is unfortunate when we find Muslims living in the West, whether to pursue a career or to achieve a degree. Nevertheless, a lot of them migrate, they settle down, and they take this as their home, only to be shocked later on and to expose to themselves and to the world how hypocrisy is being done big time. So in Islam, this is basic knowledge. It's part of our religion. No Muslim would defy this or say that this is not true. The Prophet said, instruct your children to pray when they're 7 and beat them up or spank them when they're 10 if they refuse to pray. If I do this in the West, in non-Muslim countries, they would take my child away from me. Why are you doing this? They say, this is child abuse. This is part of who I am. This is part of my religion. So, well, this is wrong. Now you're saying I am wrong or Islam is wrong. The enmity is not to me personally. The enmity is to Islam as a religion. And you can go on and on and on in so many things that as Muslims we cannot accept to be treated in this ill way. For example, in the Scandinavian countries, it is mandatory from an early age, even intermediate, even high school, that there is a physical education classes. Men and women, boys and girls, it's a mixed school. So if I say that my daughter is not going to participate in a swimming class, by law she has to. What do you mean by law? I don't want her to study. We will force you and we will take her from you. This is slavery. You're not giving me the freedom of expression, the freedom of religion. You're not giving me any kind of freedom. You want me to be a slave for the system. This is against my religion. Well, this tough luck. It is tough luck because it's your problem in going to such countries. Remain in a country that gives you the dignity to practice your own religion without harming anyone. I don't want my son to swim with another girl with all these hormones in him and tell him not to do any sin. This is not natural. And this is why we have so many unnatural things in these countries. We have a high rate of suicide. We have a high rate of abortion, without marriage, of course. And don't even mention intoxicants and drugs and depression and all these psychiatric illnesses that's governing and controlling these countries. Alhamdulillah for the grace and blessing of Islam. So this is something that the Muslims should be aware of. You don't want your child to be taken away from you and given to a Christian family or an agnostic family just because they claim the social welfare that they're taking care of your kid. They're not taking care of your kid.
Okay, yeah, so this is very essential information because many times this is what happens. So if I'm understanding you correctly, it is not only focused on the parents that the child has, but also the environment that the child is put in, both locally as in the community level and as a nation-wide, and how that may affect their growing up, their upbringing in the future.
True.
Yeah, excellent. Well, inshallah ta'ala, this is our time for today, Sheikh. This is a very dense topic, very crucial information that needs to be covered. Thank you for your immense knowledge and wisdom.
Barakallahu feekum.
Ameen wa iyyak. For our viewership, we hope that you benefited greatly from this program. We thank you for your constant support. Inshallah ta'ala, stay tuned for our other continuous episodes of Life's Adornments. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.